Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Faith Connect. All right, so if the guys in the back had stopped talking, we could get started. Oh, it's him. Okay. I should have known better. Okay, so I've got a few announcements here that I've been asked to give. The first one is concerning coldest night of the year. It's about a month away. And so we're still looking for staff teams to be created. So far, interestingly, Edmonton is in the lead in terms of the number of teams. Edmonton, you have 15 teams. All right, and 46 walkers and 9 volunteers. And so far, you have raised $3,300. Calgary, on the other hand, is the laggard. And we only have 10 teams from Calgary, 25 walkers, and 20 volunteers. And so far, we've raised $860. Red Deer has 9 teams, 34 walkers, 12 volunteers, and they've already raised $4,321. So they've already raised much more than anyone else. So Congratulations there, Red Deer. Needless to say, there's lots of opportunity here. And we want to encourage all of you to go and be a part of it. And Bill has his hand up in the back. All right. So Bill will not be here. He will be on vacation. Oh, you are here? All right. So Bill could use your help, okay? As could the rest of us. Okay, so that's coldest night of the year, and it's always it's a fun walk. Yeah, it really is. And this year, in Calgary in particular, we're going to be in a new location, so that might be one of the reasons why the number of people are down a little bit. So it just gives you more incentive to step up and step forward. The other thing I wanted to mention this morning, next week's speaker is Matt. Okay? All right. Is the report to the community has just been released. And so you might want to pick one of those up and have a read of what actually is going around in the mustard seed. I was surprised by some of the statistics in here. One of the ones that spoke to me here in Calgary, the Wellness Center. The Wellness Center had provided last year 49,000 services. So think about that. Isn't that amazing? Another stat that kind of blew me away was the one for in Red Deer. Did you know that they served over 53,000, made 53,000 lunches for the school program last year? That's a lot of lunches. And a couple others here. Across the province, over 30,000 individuals received clothing items from the mustard seed. And there were over 7,500 food hampers that were delivered through the mustard seed. So there's lots more stats in here. There's also some great stories. So you might want to grab a report to the community and enjoy that. Okay, so one of the things I promised to do today is to give just a bit of a report on how we did in December. Now, this is not a programming report. This is primarily a financial report. And as CEO, this is one of the most important reports of the year, especially for me, because how we do in December determines how we do for the whole year. And so I'm excited to report that we had a really good December. It was good. So we're going to start. I'm going to talk a little bit about December giving. And all giving in December from all sources, these are donations, government funding, and rentals and other income, amounted to $5.575 million. So and you're saying, okay, well, how does that compare to anything else? Well, we're a little under budget in December. Our budget was about $500,000 more than that, believe it or not. But compared to 2016, our total giving is up about $400,000. So those are good news stories from December. Year to date is even a better story for us here at the Mustard Seed. So far, year to date, we're about $250,000 above our budget for the year. That's a good news story. All giving to this point is about $1.4 million more than last year. So that's also something to celebrate. And on top of that, our expenses compared to last year are about $400,000 less. So you are becoming much more efficient in what you do, and that's awesome. And our expenses are under budget by almost $667,000. So that's something to celebrate. Let's give God a big hand. likely the most important numbers for me as the CEO as I think about us as an organization, and part of my responsibility is to make sure we're fiscally in good shape. That's what I'm accountable to. We're going to talk about accountability today a little bit, but that's one of the things I'm accountable to the board of directors for, to make sure we're not overspending, we get enough money to pay the bank, in the bank to pay our bills. We've got enough money in reserve in case something catastrophic happens. So the number I always look at is our cash flow statement at the end of the year, because that's the number that tells us really how we're doing as an organization. And so at the end of December last year and at the end of December in 2015, we had about a little over $7 million in the bank. And that's great, because over the next 3 months, that number in the bank goes down, because we don't get as much money in the first quarter as we do in the last quarter of the year. So by the end of the fiscal year, the last 2 years, is this boring you? Okay. At the end of the fiscal year, the last 2 years, we've had about $5 million in the bank going into the next fiscal year, and that's a very healthy position for us. You know, in our bylaws, it basically says we have to have 3 months of operating expenses in the bank, and that's donation operating expenses. So that's about $3 million. So we go into the next year in a healthy position. So this year, we're at almost $7.3 million in the bank, which is really another great news story. And God continues to provide for us year after year, and we are so grateful. And so kudos to the development team who's working hard to make that happen. Those of you in programs and in grant writing that are looking for funds to fund some of our programs, that's been awesome. Now, the interesting thing about this $7.3 million in the bank is that, in addition, this year we've really pumped up, especially those of you your Edmonton programs. So we bought a 16-unit apartment building in Edmonton. That's part of the Open Door program now. That was about $1.4 million. We also purchased what did we purchase? The Neighbor Center in Edmonton. We purchased a new building for them, which they're going to be moving into, and still we have $7.3 million in the bank. So another great news story, and we need to be thankful to God's faithfulness to us in providing for our needs. Good. Any questions about the money? All right. So now that I've really bored you, I don't know if you remember the last time I spoke, but I talked about our values, and I think it's important that we continue to remind ourselves of our values. I talked about respect for all. Today, I'd like to, because we don't have a whole lot of time, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes and focus on another one of our values, and that value is transparent accountability. For those of you who have been on the journey with us for the last 2 or 3 years, you'll remember a couple of years ago when we reestablished the values for the organization. And just to be really honest, I've been so pleased and excited about how each one of you has accepted those as part of your work life. But I think it's also good that we continue to remind ourselves, because some of you are new in the last year, and maybe you haven't heard a lot about our values, but we have 5 values. Our first value is Christ-centeredness. Our Our second value is transparent accountability. Respect for all is our third. Open communication is our fourth. And holistic innovation is our fifth. And so when I have the opportunity to speak, I'm going to, over through this rest of this year, hopefully touch on each one of those values just as a reminder of what we stand for as an organization, what we actually do value. So transparent accountability. You know, what's the opposite to being transparent? It's keeping secrets. And I think we all recognize that secrets can harm, but secrets can also protect us. And learning and living that balance, I think, is the challenge. Now, personally, I gravitate more to sharing more than less. I think that's good for an organization. I had coffee with one of our clients last week, and he had asked some of our staff what they liked about me. I was not fishing for compliments, but the response was, according to him, is that I was transparent. And then he added something that disturbed me a little, maybe sometimes too transparent. So I don't know exactly what to do with that experience, but my own personal experience has taught me that the more information that is shared, the more people will engage in the life of the organization. There's a positive curiosity, I think, around the what and the why of what we're doing, as well as how we're doing as an organization. And that's one of the reasons why I do these little financial reports. And after the next board meeting and after each board meeting, I try to give a report of what's going on in the organization, what's in the mind of the board of directors. Because I think it's important that the more you share and the more you understand of what we're doing, the better you can come alongside and say, okay, I'm part of the team, I'm moving forward. You know, I think there's a mountain of practical outcomes that happen because of transparency. One of the things transparency does is it takes the power of information and it distributes it to everyone. I'm sure you've heard information is power. And if I know something that you don't know, then I have a level of power over you. When we value transparency, power cannot be used to control. That's a benefit. It's a benefit to the organization. Secondly, transparency, as I stated earlier, helps us be engaged in the mission. I don't ever want to hear around here that information is on a need-to-know basis and you don't need to know. Because it automatically makes us feel less than. And that's not the kind of environment we're trying to create here. Thirdly, when change comes, no one is caught by surprise. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to like the change, but hopefully they're aware of the change and the reasons behind the change. Fourthly, it takes away fear and uncertainty in lots of areas. How knowing the strategic plan will help you identify your place in the organization. How salary bands tell you where you are and what to expect salary-wise. It takes away uncertainty the more transparent we are. And finally, it gives us the freedom to share our strengths and our weaknesses. Mother Teresa once said, honesty and transparency make you vulnerable. Be honest and transparent anyway. It's saying sometimes that I'm not very good at this or that. It's being willing to be transparent about it, and then somebody can come come alongside and say, I can help you learn that skill. Or let's focus on what your strengths are and put you in a position where you can use your strengths. Transparency allows us to do those kinds of things. And that allows us as an organization to win. But this transparency is also linked to accountability. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like to be accountable. I don't know about you, but there's something in my nature that says, I don't want to have to tell somebody what I'm doing. I think it's a result of the fall, to be honest, and it's our fallen state. And in fact, in the Gospel of John, it talks about how men and women love darkness rather than light. And I think when we're not accountable, we allow those shades of darkness to creep in to our lives. So the fact that I don't like it likely means that I really need it. And so I try to make myself accountable. Now, for me, accountability ultimately is from the board of directors. For you, it's from your director. And for you, it's sometimes more immediate than for me. But the reality is, because the board of directors meet 4 times a year, I have to make myself accountable in other ways, not just to the board. I have to make myself accountable to you and what I do. And so this accountability, I think, is something that goes beyond our supervisors. It's something that ultimately, in a well-functioning organization, is accountability to one another. Sometimes we have to ban from our brains this belief that accountability is really about distrust. It's not about distrust. It's about putting up fences that help us from wandering into areas that are unhealthy or unhelpful. And like I said, we all have to do it, including me. And one of the checks I have is around my time. That seems like a really stupid little thing, but one of the things I do with Daisy, and she doesn't even realize it, I'm sure, is that whenever I leave at the end of the day, I tell her that I'm leaving at the end of the day. Because I need to be accountable for that. And I did it with Kathleen for 3 years previous to that. It's one of those little ways that I say, okay, I'm going to be accountable. I want to be accountable for my time. And I think all of us should think of those kinds of things that say, okay, what helps me be accountable? When we think of accountability, we often think of the financials, the accountability that comes through checks and balances. The directors are accountable not just for the money that is spent, but the results in the investment. So that's why we have key performance indicators. That's why we have strategic plan. That's why we evaluate against all of those things, because it creates a level of accountability. And the more that you're held accountable, I believe, the more the organization can thrive. If a program fails, ultimately, I'm the one who is responsible for the program in the eyes of the board. For this reason, I hold the directors accountable and responsible. Because ultimately, if I don't hold them accountable, the board is going to hold me accountable. Unfortunately, that's kind of how it works in organizations. And so when I think of accountability, I think there's likely 3 areas that we need to think about accountability. We need to think about accountability in terms of our time. How am I using my time? Am I using it profitably? Am I wasting it? How am I going to make myself accountable for that time? Our talent or our skills? How am I using the skills that I have? Am I being accountable for what I'm actually doing? And of course, the last one is our treasure, our money. And I think all of those have organizational ramifications. They certainly have personal ramifications of time, talent, and treasure. But they have organizational ramifications as well. And if we take seriously our own accountability in each of those areas, I think what we'll discover is that we'll be happier in our work and we'll be more productive as well. I think one of the best things we can do for each other is to hold ourselves accountable. The Bible actually is replete with examples of accountability. One of the most common is that one in Matthew chapter 25, where it talks about the parable of the talents. Well, in newer versions, it says it's the parable of the bags of gold, because that's really what it is about. It's about money and about investment. Maybe in 50 years it'll be bags of bitcoins or something. I don't know. But the parable, tells the story, and most of you know it, of the master who gave his servant 5 bags of gold, 2 bags of gold, 1 bag of gold, and then he went away, and the guy with 5 bags, he invested it. When the master came back, he said, "Here's 10 bags of gold. I've invested your money." And the one who had 2 invested it, and came back. Here's 4 bags of gold. And of course, the last one, he knew the master was a hard taskmaster, and so he went and he buried the bag of gold in a hole. And when the master came back, he said, "Here's your bag of gold." Now the master got back what he gave to the servant, but there was an accountability there that the master expected of those that he gave the money to invest in. And I don't personally ever want to be in a position before God and before those that I am responsible for to say, "You know what, I haven't been accountable. I haven't been a good custodian of the resources that you've given me." And I think that's a challenge for each one of us. Let's think about this value for us as an organization. And to be honest, overall, I am so pleased with the level in which you have taken the values of the organization and made them part of your values for your work life here. I'm so pleased with that because that's what's revolutionizing this organization. And I do want to commend you, but I also want to remind you there's more things we can do. Let me close in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the opportunity we have to be together. Lord, we pause to give you thanks for your blessings. Father, as we think of the finances this past year, this past month, Lord, the only conclusion we can come to is that we have found your favor. And Father, that you have blessed us by calling people to give to the ministry and the work of this great organization. Father, I thank you for each person that works here. And Lord, I want to pray a blessing on them and ask you, Lord, to continue to guide them. Father, give them a vision and help them as they work together to accomplish your good and perfect will in this place. And we will thank you now in Christ's name. Amen. God bless you guys and have a great day.